how does Prop 19 affect the transfer of my house to my son?
Yeah, to your son. Okay. So this was really interesting. Obviously, with Prop 19, when you transfer your home to your beneficiaries, there is it's like the sale was done again in terms of property taxes. So if you bought the house for 200,000 and now it's worth 3 million or something, your property taxes might be quite low, but if it's now revalued at 3 million, property taxes would jump up a lot. And so your son now has to pay a lot more property taxes than you do. That could be a problem depending on how much money your son has or what other money you might be leaving him, right? Whether he could afford it. There is a step up in basis on the house. So you paid 200 and you pass away and it's worth 3 million. The step up in basis would go all the way to 3 million. If your son had to sell the home, they could do it without any capital gains tax or, roughly at that point in time. But there is a $1 million exclusion, right? As long as your son lives in that home, basically, if it was a $3 million house, they'd look at it as if it was a $2 million house, and for property tax purposes. I think you were telling me, Ethan, that they have to live there, and as soon as they stop living there, it actually goes back up. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's only a temporary thing. As long as it's your primary residence, you would then pay it. So like say, but you could also switch. Say your brother a brother and sister inherited,
Mm-hmm.
one person could live there as a primary residence,
Oh,
and then you say that person moves out, but the sister moves in,
yeah.
you could then still keep that tax basis.
Keep
So
that $1 million minus. Yeah.
yeah, that $1 million minus. So essentially the way they do the calculation is they would they take it's essentially you have a $2 million basis now, and that's the basis that grows now. So it's rough because growing from 100,000 at 2% each year versus 2 million 2% a year is a big difference.
Yeah,
Or
that's
like,
right. And you were telling me that if the house is worth less than $1 million, and you're getting $1 million exclusion, then the property taxes just stay the same. Is that correct?
yeah, and it's yeah. So you don't have any change if you have a sub $1 million house, or the difference between the basis and the house's value is less than
Yeah,
$1 million.
yeah. And
Um,
we're using rough, rough guidelines here. There's a lot of
yeah,
details, but don't want to bore you to death with the details. But it's a good question. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's really rough because previously Prop 13 allowed you for your primary residence, you could transfer that basis with unlimited exclusion. So I could have $100,000 in a $3 million house, and I could still transfer that 100,000 to my child, which is like a massive difference.
Yeah,
And then also for investment properties with Prop 19 investment properties or any kind of like other properties outside your primary residence,
yeah,
they're not there's no exclusion for them. So
right.
previously you had $1 million that you could a basis, that old basis that you could pass to that your beneficiaries, and they would keep that basis. But
Yeah,
now they just get reassessed at market value.
yeah. So it's gonna be really interesting. I think that law has been very unwelcome within my clientele. I get a lot of questions about it, and people are not real happy, especially the way it was presented prior to the election. I think there's some pieces there that people didn't really realize. There are a couple of things running around out there where they're trying to reverse this with another bill that might end up on the ballot. So we'll see. Hopefully, something does get improved here because it's not as good as it was. And so it was designed to make people rotate homes, which is what the realtors want that wrote these things. But that's not really the objective all the time within my clientele. That's for sure.